Chair of YONECO, Professor Mawabana, Chair of PAN, Julia, Program Manager PAN, Traditional Heritage President, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. At this point in time, we are getting into the official opening phase. I would want to say is that maybe we would have a very quick round of introduction, just your name, the country you are coming from, and what you are doing, so that we are able to know each other, but also for the peers to have a picture of what is around before I introduce the item. So,
my name is Justin Bitonga. I am the program manager for Parenting in Africa Network, and I come from Kenya.
My name is Joseph. I am from Ethiopia. I work for an organization called OBC Network Ethiopia.
My name is Jackie Brown. I'm from Triple P International. I'm here based in Canada.
I'm Natalia Haloindo. I'm a curriculum developer at an organization called Lifeline Childline.
I'm in YONECO, Malawi. I am with Ntonga. I work with YONECO as program manager. So,
Jean-Marie Moses, I work for Zonke Gender Justice Network in South Africa.
Working with IRC in Kenya. Yanika is my name. I'm from Uganda and I work with parents of children with learning disabilities.
I'm working with Agri as a program manager. My name is Alex Nkosi. I work with the Center for Social Concern in Malawi.
I'm Boniface Kapowe. I work for UNICEF Malawi.
I am Alhaji Bakari from Office of Sultan Joe representing Chair Joe.
Ernest Mawayo, journalist, Malawi.
I'm Senior Chief Ruben, one of the traditional leaders here. We are three.
My name is Rafael Lozoa, a journalist working with the Zodiac Broadcasting Station.
My name is Lazar Sarawa, working as Deputy Director for Livingstonians Innovates Program in the North.
My name is Jenny from Ganawine. I work with Foundation for Children's Rights. We are based in Uzuzu.
My name is Akim Kangan. I'm a journalist working with the Malawi Broadcasting Corporation.
My name is Hampton Machane, NBC. My name is Dr. Gizomo, working with the Center for Youth Development and Social Development.
My name is Nyasugara Kateke. I'm working with CCM in Tanzania.
My name is James Kabanina, working with Masuna, one of the Hebrews partners in the realm. My name is Michael Navaya, working for AGRI, that's Adolescent Girls Literacy, in charge of Malawi.
Trevor Davis from Zimbabwe, working with the Africa Fatherhood Initiative, trying to encourage more committed, responsible, involved fatherhood.
I'm Diane.
The Africa Child Center, based in Uganda.
My name is Hazel Manda. I'm the Executive Director for AGRI, based in Chago.
My name is Mary, and I work in Kenya at a place called Busia, at the border of Kenya and Uganda.
My name is Arunchi Zobutu. I work for ICS, a development organization working towards the well-being of children and families. I manage the Africa Program on Child Protection and Parenting.
My name is Miriam Ramanja, Executive Director, Parents of Disabled Children Association of Malawi, Podika.
It's Lydia Nesgoma. I work with Parent in Uganda. We run an integrated childhood program.
For guest of honor, my name is Kosa Mutari. With Focus Foundation for Community Support Services in Nkopola.
Stella Mukwa, I work at the Secretary of Parent in Africa Network. I'm in charge of communication.
My name is Christina. I'm from Botswana. I'm working for the government and running the initiative of teen parenthood challenges in schools.
Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Buyu and I work for ICS. I'm the Child Protection Officer, Kenya.
My name is Michael Mandila. I work for Rice Institute for Social Empowerment, formerly known as Ganigwe Support Organization.
Shikamo. My name is Edward Flatani. I work from Kombozi. We focus on treating all children.
My name is Jared Ojeda. I work for Secretariat, Research and Monitoring Officer.
My name is Nkopola. I work for YONECO Zomba.
My name is Charles Tanga, working with YONECO as media and deputy director of officer.
1, 2, 3.
Julia Stark, who is the chairperson of the steering committee for the Parenting in Africa Network, but she comes from the Teen Parenting Center in South Africa, Cape Town. And then on your immediate right is Professor Dixon Mavabanda, who is the chairperson of the Board of Trustees for Youth, Net and Counselling. And on the very far right is Mr. Karanda, the Director of Child Affairs, and I will ask Mr. Karanda to introduce him.
Thank you very much, McBain. The only person who has not been introduced in the room, who is sitting to the left-hand side of Professor Dixon Mavabanda, is our Principal Secretary for the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Dr. Mary Shah.
Thank you very much, Madam. And without wasting much of your time, I would like to invite Professor Dixon Mavabanda to give us the welcome remarks.
Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Raise us from day one when we soul came to the world, we have always been there. Mothers have never gave up on us. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing for us to pause for a moment and thank our mothers. Our guest of honor, who is the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Gender and Child Development, Dr. Mary Shawa, the Director of Child Development, my senior colleague here, Kalanda, in the Ministry of Gender and Child Development, the Chair, Parenting in Africa Steering Committee, Madam Julia Stark, Executive Director, Youth, Net and Counselling, YONECO, Monsieur McBain, Monsieur. I also want to recognize the Parent Secretariat Program Manager, Madam Josephine Itonga. I also want to recognize the conference presenters and facilitators. I also want to recognize the Royal Highness, the one who led us in singing that song, Senior Chief Lukwa, Maulimwana. I also want to recognize all the distinguished delegates that have come from various countries. I'm extremely pleased on behalf of the YONECO, board, staff, management, and our stakeholders to welcome you all to the second parenting conference under the theme Understanding the Realities of Teenage Parenting. A special focus on adolescent girls and boys with parenting responsibilities. Our guest of honor, ladies and gentlemen, YONECO is very excited to host this conference. When the Executive Director mentioned about our membership to Parenting in Africa Network in 2011, the board unanimously approved the resolution. One might be wondering why parenting is an issue for us. YONECO works on child protection, and we cannot talk about child protection without parents. Parents become primary abusers and also unsuspectedly have not protected the children enough because of lack of skills in parenting. Guest of honor, YONECO deals with youth development, which focuses on behavior change. You are aware that in the world today we are faced with a number of issues which include drug and abuse, substance abuse, poor behaviors resulting from frustration and economic pressures, and these require attention of parents as their source of support. There is need, therefore, to strengthen the parenting skills. Let me underline this. Play is so important to optimal child development that it has been recognized by the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights as a right of every child. This right is challenged by forces including child labor and exploitation practices, war and neighborhood violence, and the limited resources available to children living in poverty. However, even those children who are fortunate enough to have abundant available resources and who live in relative peace may not be receiving the full benefit of play. Many of these children are being raised in an increasingly hurried and pressured style that may limit the protective benefits they will gain from child-driven play. Having said all this, I would like to thank the government of Malawi through our guest of honor for accepting to lead in hosting this conference. Let's give a big hand to you. I wish you all the best and God bless you.
Now I'm going to talk about the country chapter contributions to this day. When we thought about the conference for this year and the focus for the conference, we felt we needed to go around the countries where we work in and just have a round of discussions and why we need to focus on this theme. And largely we feel that as we all know, adolescents consist of a very large significance of Africa's population, and therefore it was very important that we need to focus on them. So in a summary, that's really what we came up with in terms of talking, going around the country, talking to our chapter members, and these are the issues they brought up, that we need to find a way to focus on them. Look at this generation as a very critical, mass of young people that really are the future of our country, of Africa. Thank you very much and welcome, and let's have fun.
I would like to briefly talk about strengthening family relations, which are very important. There are many ways to define a family, but they all have one common idea, is caring. Whether a particular family is a nuclear family, a step family, a single parent family, or an empty nest family, it usually consists of related people who care about each other. Regardless of type, all families also need to be nurtured and strengthened from time to time. We all are aware that indeed, from where we were, the traditional family has changed over time. We cannot stick to that definition using the traditional family. We need to accommodate what is happening around. So this presentation will try to offer some suggestions for improving and strengthening relationships in the family.
I'm happy to be in Malawi. It's my second time to be in Malawi. But I also remember when I was a small girl in Form 1, I had this pen pal friend from Malawi, a place called Lilongwe. I didn't know about Lilongwe. And I know he told me he used to teach me words from Chichewa tribe. Then one day he wrote me a letter and said he was coming to take me from Kenya and marry me. My parents found the letter, beat me, and then I stopped seeing him. Getting a paper entitled Adolescents with Their Parenting Responsibilities. This is teenage parents, household heads, issues and concerns. It's an experience from a Kenya rural context. I work in a rural context. That is just the introduction. I work for an NGO called Rural Education and Economic Enhancement Program. It is a local NGO registered in Kenya in 1998, and RIP works in Busia County, Kakamega. Kenya is now divided in counties, and we have our headquarters at a place called Butula and a field office. Our mission is to prevent the spread of HIV and mitigate the impact of AIDS in the community through capacity building, lobbying, and advocacy for the protection of human rights. Our vision is an AIDS-free generation. Those are our core values. Our thematic areas include the prevention of new HIV infection, mitigation of the impact of AIDS, protection of human rights, and capacity building. We want to look at factors that lead to children becoming parents. And just there we have a picture of one boy who is the big brother of those two little girls. Both parents died.
Josephine, myself being as one of the traditional leader of Malawi, of this Malawi country, to explain more, how did you convince community people down there in order the community to understand on this matter? And Mary Mahoka, I think you said that is not, I can say that is not hard to break bad cultural practices. Because if we as Africa, if we can speak one voice to stop all bad cultural practices, I think we can achieve and we can fight against this.
My first then, it's a question of comment, it goes to Josephine. You have mentioned about access to reproductive health, that I think in your country, you don't have that much access, the youth don't have much access. I want to talk in the context of youth with disabilities, which is maybe could be a different issue in here. I'm very much interested because that's where I belong, to the disability fraternity. I'm very much concerned that indeed youth are facing challenges, and in your country, do you come across youth with disabilities also accessing challenges in accessing reproductive health? Because here in Malawi, we have a lot of youth that are unwanted pregnancies or maybe doing teenage mothers at a very, very tender age. Because when they go to hospitals, try to access the reproductive health, they're chased away. Even during time of birth, they have a lot of abuses. I don't know how you handle that in your country in the context of youth with disabilities. And I have a question because I think maybe the question goes maybe even in the whole area. Because recently in our country, Malawi, I've heard in the radios, on the TVs, it even happened to my very tender nephews, where we are trying to promote circumcision. Because we believe partly it will help in the contraction of HIV/AIDS. And now with the issue which you have said, it tries to promote the board to go and practice. I don't know whether we should really promote the circumcision, or maybe one or the other. I also seem to have an answer. Maybe we could try to emphasize on the family planning, so that maybe even though they go out and practice out there, they don't contract HIV/AIDS. And the board chair, all what you said is very marvelous. I think it's going to help us to strengthen our families when we go back there. Thank you.
I first think it goes to the first presenter in terms of the general picture. When we are sharing in terms of the programs that are happening in most of the countries, I haven't heard what is happening in Malawi, so to say. Secondly, we'll be winding up tomorrow by talk of Plan 4. Another declaration is to be as a way forward. Can we learn from this being the second conference? So far, what have we from the previous? If this marks like the second, and tomorrow we are coming up with another direction. So far, what have we learned? I will be listening. What laws do we have in Kenya to really safeguard this girl, beautiful child? We are getting those stories at the age of 16. It's like normal, but there is social factors. Is there anything to do with parents' consent, and what is like the age in terms of marriage. Secondly, if you have those laws that protect this girl child, the child in this arena, how are they being, are they, or just on the shelf, maybe they have really been translated and people are pretty aware about those. The other issue is you indicated of being border. What sort of like border issues? Ask the number of issues that come as a result of cultural, to what extent have we involved in the custodians? Lastly, to the board chair, the first TV, do you have an additional story that you need to share about from the TV script? Thank you.
In terms of convincing community people to understand issues of parenting, the first question, Parenting in Africa Network is a membership network, and we work with the members from many countries in Africa, and these are members who are in touch with communities. So a lot of the experiences and the programs we document are from the communities themselves. So we do bring out these issues from the communities, and it is out of the members' advice in terms of what the communities want to learn. Then whatever we document that looking at what the community needs. And let me just add that we are in the process of now documenting cultural positive parenting practices that worked in our African traditions that we felt were there and they guided families on how to be strong and how to rear children. And these for some reason have been forgotten. And we felt they have to be a guiding light in terms of bringing these lessons back. And that is going to be available to members to be able to look at what they can learn from in terms of working with their communities. Youth with disabilities and access to health information. This is a challenge across all the countries we work with in terms of engagement with members. And indeed, now the youth with disability presents a different category of vulnerabilities already. Because in terms of the youth across board, there is problems of access. Then when it comes to disabilities, the disabilities are now many, it still presents a lot of issues in terms of access to information. And the experience of members, again, is that there needs to be ways of how we can proactively work with youth, and in light of the categories of disabilities that we have, and ensure that they are able to access this information. Lessons from Malawi. We have combined this conference with learning lessons from Malawi. I hope we shall hear some of them. In our visiting countries, we were not able to come to Malawi because we were going to come here. So we are waiting to hear from the Malawi people about the issues of adolescents and parenting responsibilities here, and we can see then how we can ensure that the issues they have, the concerns they have, are also captured, even as we look at making that declaration for a way forward.
Just to say thank you very much for the comments that I received from you. I just want to say that the family is very important and will continue to remain important. Indeed, the structure of the family has had some challenges, and some of the challenges have been highlighted. But what we are seeing is that indeed, if we go back, traditionally, there is this extended family, where when we try to use what I call umutology, yes, where the umuntu comes in, you find that we take care of each other. You will notice that even the issue of orphanages, we're not there in our city. This is something that we are starting because we are in a fix. But I think we need to go back to maybe from our chiefs and all that. We had a meeting on the parenting workshop with the representatives from Machinga and the Mangochi, 2 districts. What was coming out from there, the parents taught us that we need to go further to engage traditional leaders because they are the guardians of the culture. Because there were some cultural areas that were highlighted there that we needed to tackle. But we feel that we can do that together with you chiefs.
I'll try and answer the question. The first one was on circumcision. And I want to tell you, in Kenya, we still have 2 forms of circumcision. We have the traditional circumcision, and now they are promoting the voluntary medical male circumcision. But again, working in a rural traditional setup, you still get that although we are promoting, RIP promotes, my organization promotes voluntary medical male circumcision. We've had over 3,000 males circumcised medically, but you get those who are circumcised traditionally laughing at these other ones. One, because for them to be circumcised, they have to be like injected, anesthesia, they don't feel the pain. But you know, a man must feel pain. Once again, although we are promoting voluntary male circumcision in Kenya, but again, the way it was passed on, the way it was disseminated was wrong. It was like, if you are circumcised, you will not get AIDS. That's how people came to understand it. So once again, people get circumcised through this medical process, but now they believe now once you're circumcised, you cannot get AIDS. It's like you now have a permanent condom. And that again has made people to weaken their responsibility in even preventing HIV itself after this voluntary medical male circumcision. It was brought in a bad way. And then somebody was asking, what laws do we have in Kenya? And I want to say we have very beautiful laws in Kenya. We have the Children's Act. Kenya is a signatory to the UNCRC. We have all these laws protecting children from child labor, from prostitution, from exploitation and everything. But as you rightly say, implementation is a problem. And especially for us who are working in rural areas, where you get the traditional law, which is sometimes does not recognize them. Like in my tribe, in my community, a girl of 18 is very old. I have 18-year-olds who are mothers of 4 already. So, how the tradition defines a child and how the law defines a child is very different. And because there is nobody to monitor every family, unfortunately, the traditional law always wins. You know, yeah, implementation has become a problem. With high illiteracy levels, you get, nobody even has that information as such.
For the presentation, and thank you, Professor and Josephine, for your presentation as well. My question is, how have you involved the church or any spirituality in your area? Knowing that the church has a very big role in parenting and marriages. Churches are the ones who marry people. Where are they, as we were talking about it? Thank you.
What actions are taken to see that this doesn't happen? Because from my school of thought, to some extent, teenage parenting can be avoided. So how are we investing in actions to make sure that teenage parenting is reduced? And do we have support from even the Malawi government and my two counterparts to talk on behalf of Kenya government? What activities are we doing? What actions are we doing to make sure that in as much as we are mitigating the factor of teenage parenting, we are trying to accept that social norms are changing and still cap, meaning bring it down. Then we don't have to fight with, we don't have to struggle with dealing with very many cases of teenage pregnancies, but fewer cases.
Thank you very much. My name is Tonga. I work with the Youth Net and Counselling, YONECO, and I want to appreciate all the presenters for the wonderful presentation. But my question goes to Mary. Part of it has already been asked by the Executive Director for CAVOC, but I also wanted to learn from the work that you are doing in terms of how you are supporting the babies of the teen parents who have been rescued from teen marriages. What other structures do you have in place to ensure that as we are supporting maybe this girl to go back to school, their child is also does not fall victim of abuse? Thank you.
Try and contribute to the cross-cutting question on what actions are being done by all of us. For me, already highlighting this issue is one of the ways to look at what we can do. because it is something which is not spoken about, it's hidden under the carpet. We know that these children are with us, and we know that they are missing a lot in terms of their development. So highlighting it and having us talk about it and ask questions is one thing that we are doing as PAN. In addition to that, we are highlighting skillful parenting, positive parenting, as a way forward in terms of safeguarding our families. If we were able to know all the components that Professor talked about in certain families, maybe these children are not going to become pregnant because they will know from an early age how their bodies are developing. They will know what to avoid and what can happen. So I think the first step is, let's talk about this. Let's maybe probably ask, let our governments know we have this problem, and we ask them, what can we do? What is there? And if there are policies, how can we implement them for us to curb this situation? And for those who are already there, how can we help them so that they don't just get lost?
The issues that we're tackling here are quite huge. But I think those small aspects of it, if we have shared responsibility and take them on board and they begin to share experiences like the way we are doing, I think we might be making some headway. But if we think that we can transform our communities within a week, that we should okay. Because you notice that there are so many aspects to this issues that we're dealing with.
But a lot of times, as churches, I think especially churches in the rural areas, we have shied off from talking straight to children. We have shied off from, sex, anything like that is sinful. And we just assume when we anoint the children, when we tell them about the story of Joseph and David and the killing of the lions and all that, these children will grow. So what we've done in our organization is that now we are working with pastors and we are training them and Sunday school teachers. And we are training them to go deeper, that as these children grow, they need to understand the developmental stages, things that they will pass through. Just because this child is a Sunday school child, it will not stop their hormones from raging all over. And these are things that were never talked about. How do we deal with rescued children from marriage? I want to tell you it is one of the most difficult things that we actually do, and it's not easy. In my county, we just developed a rescue center. I think we launched it last week. And what has been happening has been actually abusive. Like when you rescue a child from marriage, you take to the children's office. There is either they take them to an orphanage, which will not be willing to take in a girl with a child. If not, sometimes they have been kept at the police cells.
There's a tradition, culture, where it needs people to get together and look at things like gender relations and gender responsibilities within that difficult area. The churches, yes, we need to transform masculinities within the church's frameworks, so we need more conversations there.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question and basically a comment, somehow comments and a question at the end. Do you marry? In your presentation, thank you very much for your presentation, which was so clear. But in your presentation, my observation was that you dwelt much on the men, boys as being the culprits. But I think issues of sex and the likes, they don't happen without the other bit consenting to the same. I don't know in your culture, in your country, Kenya, if such things are just being forced on women, or is it also not part of the socialization of women and girls in Kenya that has also contributed to all these vices which you articulated in your presentation? But however, for one, I feel as a way forward, then it means everyone must be involved.
The question is going to Mary. I'm memory from YONECO. I wanted just to know if you have ever come across a situation whereby a young boy and a young girl have been forced to marriage, and the parents and even the community are aware and they don't want that situation to happen. Then you counsel the boy and the girl at the same time. the boy realizes that whatever he's doing is not good to his future, then the girl she still wants to go to marriage, to get married. So I wanted to know what you do or what tactics do you use so that girl can come back to school.
My question goes to the last presenter. I just want to find out the role of traditional leaders in your area. As an NGO, what sort of relationship is there between you and the traditional leaders in your area? What these traditional leaders are doing to combat whatever bad culture is prevailing in your area? Thank you.
I just want to find out how much are you emphasizing on the issue of family planning, so that even though they indulge in sex, but at least maybe they should not have children at a very tender age. Thank you.
I answered the first question that I presented men and boys as culprits and sex is between two people. And I will answer that. I think I very clearly talked about socialization. That in my area, the men are, right from the time they are a boy child, and I've told you about the kind of circumcision they go through. This makes them very, very aggressive. The boy child is brought up to be very, very aggressive, and the girl child is brought out to be very, very passive. So you will get that many, many times, actually, the girl's first sex experience is through rape. Either rape during a date, and I don't know whether in Malawi you have this thing that says that when a girl says no, she means yes. In fact, the other day in the Kenya Parliament, they were trying to introduce a bill on rape in marriage. And Beatrice, I think the men opposed it. It didn't go through. It's like, how can you rape your wife? And the boys say, how can you rape your girlfriend? I want to tell you, for those of you who are reading the Daily Nation online, right now in my village we have a very bad case where this young girl of 16 had a boyfriend. She refused to sleep with him, and he hired 6 of his friends and they gun raped her and threw her in a pit latrine. I think you've read about that. All of traditional leaders, unlike Malawi, Kenya, the traditional leaders are, you heard me say they need strengthening. Our leaders, the chiefs, are actually part of the administration from the presidential office downward. The village headmen are the lowest level of. So that traditional aspect died. And a lot of our our chiefs are like people on payroll who want to do interviews. Sometimes they bribe their ways to become chiefs. And that is why it has been very hard even for them to really protect the child. That traditional part is not there.
And boys being culprit. I think in the presentation, I think it was also highlighted that there were some women that took advantage of the boys. So only that there is more cases happening on the girls from men and boys. I think that's why you put it that way. But you also notice that when you talk about gender, it's equality between men and women. But gender equity, we have problems there. There is inequality. So we find ourselves that women, females, seems to be on the side that they are sometimes powerless. So you find that in many of these cases, the people that are being mentioned to be the perpetrators of any abuse are people with power, influence, and all other things. Family planning in Malawi, yes, we have those policies in place. I think there are some misconceptions. Acceptance to this has been quite a challenge. I know the Minister of Health is doing all that it can. But then the challenge that we have is that just providing information is not adequate, because you need to make sure that people have access and also the services are available.
From Uganda, apparently I also work with an association of parents
who have children with intellectual disabilities. So we share something in common.
Good morning, everybody. It's still morning, and we've had a very fruitful morning this morning, and I just want to say welcome to everybody here, and thank you for this opportunity for us to get together and to network and to chat about these issues. And I feel a little bit strange because I have things that I need to say to you in the welcome address, which we've had to move down the program because we are waiting for some of our other guests to arrive. So I kind of feel as though I'm talking to you before I've been introduced to you and before I've allowed myself to introduce you to me. So I think if we can just bear with a little bit of that discomfort, and we'll catch up with that later. And I'm just going to go ahead then and move on with the presentation. So I'm Julia Stark. So what are the aims of the Team Parenting Program? First of all, to prevent child abuse and neglect, to teach effective, positive parenting skills. In Kenya, you normally talk about skillful parenting. We talk about effective parenting, it's the same thing. To model supportive parent-child relationships, and to break family cycles of teenage pregnancy. For whom is this program run? For teenage biological mothers and fathers, in other words, teenagers who've actually had their own children. Also for teenage caregivers, those teenagers who are looking after younger brothers and sisters, not always in child-headed households, very often the parents are there as well, but they are absent in terms of parenting. Our participants are 23 years old and younger, and that might sound a little old to you, but as you know, with teenagers who fall pregnant, they leave school and they might miss out a year or two and then they return to school, so we want to make sure that they are still included in the program. And they need to be voluntarily included in the program. In other words, they need to say, I want to be part of this program. Presentation today. I'll briefly share what we do in relation to the parenting programs we run in Africa. I want us to reflect also a little bit on the adolescent or the teenage stage we are talking about today. And in addition to that, what it means to be a parent, a young parent with children at that particular age. I will also share on our parenting approach in both East Africa, and then we will share a little bit of our experiences in Western Kenya, Northern Tanzania, and the Maasai area in Tanzania on what we are doing on parenting. As I said, we work towards the well-being of children and families in Africa and in Asia. And our mission is that people around the world are capable and willing to ensure the well-being of all children and to drive their own change. If change has to happen, then it has to start with the individual, and we believe very much in that philosophy. And then we do not do it for the people. Our mission is to work together with the people to bring, to inspire co-creation of initiatives and ventures which enable long-lasting social and economic change in order to ensure the well-being of children and young people.
Part of my work, I happened to be away from the family for quite some time. And each time I came back, I expected that my children were at the same point I left them. So when you go and you're away for 1 year, 2 years, you come back and you expect that they're still children. So one point I'm home and we plan to go out. And so we discussed with my wife and said we go ABCD. And so we tell the children, let's go, let's not go. And then my son told me, but you didn't consult us. Ndapeleka kale ule.
Ndamba mwita ndenda tilibwele na ndapinga nani chamu ngani yake ni mwana wa mlindana ngati 14
zote ana mlio 14 ndio za mwana mimi mwana zake.
Oh yerufe
wapala ananipeza ananduza kuti Ineo, nditanga matenda usiana mafuna libwerere kusukuru. Anamva kutenga kutoka kwa wale. Aone kwa anafika kumudzi baya kwa chamu. Ndio anene na kuti ana kazi. Amene analekera kupa ile kwa chimuzi.
kudzidwa amene aja asaone ngati kuti athera konto akhozesa kukhalanso ndi moyo wabwino kuyambaso ngati anaoneka kuti koyambirira panalephera koma akhoza kukhala ndi mapeto abwino.
What is it that our governments can do related to what we are discussing? Parenting with regards to teens. Also related to the legal framework, we also need to reflect through some of the policies that our governments have put in place. How do they contribute to the issues that we are discussing? Are there any challenges related to implementation of those policies? Do we also have opportunities that we can make use of? And out of the challenges and opportunities, and also lessons learned through the sharing that we have, there are a few things that we can recommend to our governments as one way of moving forward. And that should see us through our discussion. So one of the entry points is, from the legal point of view, for example, sharing the case of Malawi. Some few weeks ago, we were also meeting here in Mangochi, and at that particular time, the issue was to do with early marriages. And what we are discussing under early marriages has a direct bearing to what we are discussing today. And one of the issues that we discussed was to do with maybe doing something to our laws. So possibly when we are talking of thinking about future generations, we need to reflect what are our current laws saying on the issues that we are discussing. So each country has to reflect along those lines. If you are in Botswana, for example, what does the law in Botswana say about issues of early marriages, for instance? Is there something that we can remind our governments related to parenting education and support, related to what is already provided in our laws? That's an area that we need to look through. So for example, in the case of Malawi, we have to revisit what we are calling the marriage bill, in short. But maybe when we are looking at the legal framework, what sort of challenges are there? It's one thing to have the law, and it's another thing to implement that law. For example, the case of what I was talking about for Malawi, the Child Care Protection and Justice Act, which was passed some 3 years ago, passed into law. It says what should happen in terms of these issues. But where are the challenges? And where are the opportunities? So what is it that our governments have to do in terms of implementing the laws that they are already enacted?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that governments must be child-focused, recognizing that this is the next generation, and what we enact today must protect them tomorrow. And I think some of the issues that we see in Zimbabwe, and I'd like to hear if they're common ones, are, for example, birth registration still remains a massive issue in Zimbabwe. Simply getting a child a birth certificate. I think governments could do more. And for example, you may give birth in a hospital or a maternity unit, and then you have to take the child to an administration centre, which might be 100 kilometers away, to register the birth and get a birth certificate. Why can't we have registration officers in the maternity units? Yeah? So I think there are simple things that governments can do to ensure things like birth registration.
1 month ago, we're here in Mangochi on the early marriages. And I think what came out clear in that meeting was that we also have a contradiction in Malawi, because it's 16 by parental consent. 16 falls in a bracket of children, 17 children. And I'm even surprised that Tanzania have 15, which poses a challenge per se. What I think Malawians are looking forward to is that we need to move forward. I think we made the recommendations, and I think we must progress. People are like, I think we're dwelling much on this, but I think the debate and I think the opinion of the general populace is saying that this is by having a law which promotes 16 or 17 or 18, you are actually promoting child marriages. So I think we need the law yesterday, so that even the whole idea of putting 18, still that's a child.
I'm putting much of my vote on reinforcement. Why reinforcement, even if it's age 16? Churches are still officiating marriages to that age and giving marriage certificates. In the villages, chiefs are attending those functions. Yet the child is below the age that is required. So in other words, I feel like even if we move to 18, if the reinforcement is going to be weak, we are still going to have challenges. Because we know where these people are getting married, and we know who is putting the force, and they call the whole village to celebrate. Yet the child is age 15.
Our proposal was 21. 21, we said if the government can allow that 21, that's we can start. Minimum. We need support from the government, so that the government and those that make the laws through Malawi Law Commission, they must review the laws of Malawi and put it 21 years.
For the people to push the government to say, okay, this is what we need. And if we wait for the government to say, government is going to implement this, then government doesn't have the knowledge resource. We are the people with the knowledge resource. We say, okay, we've seen this on the ground and this works. So we go to the government and say, this is what's happening. This is what people want. And it is only from there, if it's a constitutional government, that they listen to us and they have to implement. But we are the pushers.
I wanted to just share a couple of things. One thing with the issue of harmonizing the laws. I think it's quite right that as a region, we have got issues around how the laws of our countries are actually have got the law on the issues of child marriages. I did a quick browse through some time back when I was doing a presentation somewhere else. And I think there's only one country in the region that actually has got the age of marriage the same for boys and girls. And it's about 18, I think. And there's another one that actually has got marriage age 21. And again, when you look at that, they actually say 21 for boys and something like 20 or 18 for girls. So there's an issue in terms of disparity or gender equality. That's the first point. The second point then is about the fact that where countries like Zimbabwe has got a minimum age for marriage at 16, Malawi is actually 15, not 16. They advocated for 18, that failed, and it's back to 15. So it's 15 for Malawi. But what's interesting for me from a legal perspective is that it says 15 with consent from parents. And I think that's where the problem is. People misinterpret the words consent. Consent does not mean forcing the child to marry. So even if we move the age to 21, for want of a better number, and as long as the words say consent from parents, parents will still force their children to get married. We don't even talk about availability of contraception, what our countries are doing with regards to making contraception widely available. Yes, we're saying, yes, you can marry at 15, but sorry, you can't have contraception. That doesn't make sense to me. So the other thing I want to say, especially for Malawi, and I think all of our communities, that we seem to also ignore how much this issue is breaking society. You marry someone at 14, by the time they're 18, they've got 3 children, they're divorced, and then what goes on? You know, I was sitting in a meeting last week with the Excellency from Geneva, from UN Women, and we had a testimony from a young girl who was married, divorced, was trying to go back to school.
their parents divorced, she went to live with grandparents who themselves were divorced, and then, so she was living with step-grandparents, and then while she was living there trying to go to school, those parents divorced again, so she was moved to an uncle who was also living in a divorce. I mean, this is breaking society. And we
in the morning, where somebody raised the question to say, what happens to these children when the mother goes back to school? And that's where the issue of the parenting education comes in. But when we look at what is happening, for example, in Malawi, we have simply said over the years, from 1995, you have the right to go back to school. But we have not supported the girl child, the teen parent, whether it's a boy or the girl, we have not supported it. Elsewhere in most of our rural communities, parents have simply said, okay, you chose to become pregnant, therefore you need to get married. These are issues. So what should governments do so that such type of policies are properly implemented? Government is there to provide a conducive policy environment. Is there something that can be done to a policy like that? Also, issues of making available contraceptives. There are issues of policy. For example, in Malawi, you say if you go to a primary school, no distribution of contraceptives. This is a matter of policy. So my question is, what should our governments do on matters of policy related to the issues under discussion?
Out of experience from my country, Kenya, if you have to work with government, you start with them from the word go. We come from a background of sitting as technocrats, as civil societies and experts, then we draft everything, then you have to go to them to adopt. They will reject your paper. Maybe from representatives from the government, you make them understand that, look, this is how we went to the field, these are the gaps, these are the solutions, so help us implement. So that's one of the ways we can make governments enforce and make them liable. Like we started with you from the onset, from Mangochi, we had declarations, we had agreements, you were to run with this. But if we have our own budget, independent budget, and come up with issues from the ground and take it to them to implement, they will not own the from experience, they will not own the policies, they will not run with them, they will not pass them in parliament.
The policy, I want to take as the whole process of formulation, implementation, and enforcement. I may not, first of all, cite one by one in terms of the policy. But to me, I think the way our policies get formulated, you tend sometimes to wonder, in these projects that will be implemented, if we are to move with some success stories, this is at the design, how we are correcting issues, how we are involving the communities and those issues. I think that's several questions. But I think when time comes to the policies get developed or formulated, we leave those that even would be key to make sure that policies get implemented. Because when you look at the whole system, I would want to look at the communities, the way we are structured, the way we understand issues, the way we promote all these issues, because the kids, the teenage girls, the boys that we're talking about here, they live in our society. And the first institution, even from the moral presentation, it is the family.
There's no way we can have a standalone law without it being built from another law or another policy. For example, we've got free primary policy, free primary education policy. For me, I would say, let's have the compulsory education. But then if we are having the compulsory education, we have to again look at other policies that are going to make that policy be workable. For example, we are looking at marriage age. Some are saying 18, some are saying 21. Now, if we do come to 18 or 21, and we think of a child in the village who drops out at 12, and she has nothing else to do, and maybe want to get married between 12 and 18, she has to wait all the way up to 18. What we should be doing between the ages of 12 and 18. So for me, I think let's have policies which build on each other. For example, if we want to enforce on the marriage age, then let's have the registration. Everybody be registered so that you know that a child is 16 and not fail to be 21 when she's actually 16. Another issue for me, which I wanted to raise for, maybe we haven't come to that, but I wish Ministry of Gender should be provided with enough resources. We are donor dependent as Ministry of Gender, which means we don't have our own issues that we can forge ahead. For example, for me it is a concern that we don't have any rehabilitation centers, any safe houses for people who come to complain, especially on gender-based violence. You find a whole family, they come into your office that we don't have anywhere to go. My husband has chased us out, and we don't have anywhere to throw these people. We can't even say, come to my house. They can come and stay there maybe for a day, but I can't keep them forever as they are chasing the laws.
Just wanted to add on what many have already spoken. I don't know, personally I seem to be lost somehow. Why I'm lost is I don't know what we want to deal with. It seems as if now we are tackling the branches and not the roots. We're looking at what do we do without looking at what is causing or what we're talking about. Because I think in my understanding this morning, Mary presented a very good report where in Kenya I think it has unearthed a lot of issues which disturb our education per se. Even if you look at the readmission policy, but do we have structures in place? We can readmit. And in terms of education, up to what level are we talking about? Is it just standard 8? If it goes up to standard 8, we have secondary schools. I mean, what is the distance to eat from one secondary school to the other? I mean, all those structures, are they in place? Okay, even if we look at the community level, do we have structures which can help? The report which Mary presented is equally the same that we are doing in Lisa with the Karonga program. It's almost the same. And what we've discovered is we have encouraged a lot of girls to go to school, but then they go to standard 8, what next?
These are the areas where governments have to act. They have to provide a conducive environment through the laws, through the policies, through the programs, before you can even talk of implementation. And some of the issues are being highlighted through the contributions that colleagues are making.
In Kenya, we have compulsory and free primary education. But again, the question is, how free is free? Because as much as they say there is free primary education, you get schools now demanding for money for examinations, money for, it's not really free. So how free is free in Africa when they say it is free? And that has been a problem, though the policy is free and compulsory primary education. Then in Kenya also we have a policy where children should not be forced to repeat classes. But at the same time, teachers have to produce results. And teachers have to produce the best mean score. Otherwise, sometimes parents have stormed schools to kick the head teacher out when the schools don't do well. And then also when they said in Kenya that we have a compulsory and free primary education, many people returned to school. And these days I find education in Kenya has become so low, diluted. Because now it's like all these old women, 80 years, they become celebrities when they are sitting in class with their grandchildren. We had the oldest, that guy, he died before he became a dentist. He went back to school when he was like 80. Yeah, we are making fun. My wish is that my government improves, strengthens adult education. On the issue of contraceptives, in Kenya, I think religion has been the biggest hindrance. You know, the Catholic Church, the Muslims, everybody, we still have this, I said here, making everything too spiritual. I would like to say our children need to be given the choices that are there. I don't believe that just the sight of a condom will make me have sex. Our children need to know what is happening, but it is a parenting issue, in that just the fact that you're teaching children about the contraceptives that are there does not mean that now as parents we abdicate our role in instilling values in our children.
If we don't raise a lot of awareness in the community, we will seem not to make a step ahead. Because there are a lot of policies being formulated, but why are we not making a step ahead? I think this is because, as I've said, we are lacking the issue of raising awareness. Because when you go out to the community, you will hear a lot of people, they have never heard of most of the policies that are being formulated in our countries. And also for those who have tried to raise awareness, sometimes it's because of how we trickle down the information. We have to look at the caliber of people we are dealing with. That is the thing. We have to concentrate using our local language if we want to disseminate the information out there. Somebody alluded earlier on that there was, or maybe there are some parents who force their children, the teen children to go, that refuse their teen children to go back to school. They say because you're pregnant, you have to get married, or maybe you have to work at home. This is all because of the issue of awareness. Maybe these parents have never heard that there's that opportunity, or maybe that there's that provision that the children, the teens can go back to school once they have got children.
The problem is still existing and it cannot be solved because, you know, to enforce the policies, we have to understand the root causes in advance. What are the root causes of early marriage and these problems? And material cases, social and economic causes will be the factors. Therefore, unless we educate and change the behavior of the one who is doing the act, having a policy will not be final stage. Therefore, what man is doing by now is part of this activity. Just this responsibility is not only government's responsibility. Government has the most of the power, but NGOs should be there. Place-based organizations, as we have been listening this morning, what the churches were doing in Kenya could be an example. Therefore, we have to work with such organizations as well. And FPOs, NGOs, CBOs should be involved to educate girls in the first place.
In my view, I think that is a good policy with a good intention. But it can only work if there is enough support from the parents, support from the government itself, and support from the children and the teachers who are handling the children. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because when girls get babies, when they are very young, they get a lot of challenges. One, the colleagues or the peers make fun of them. The teachers, some of the teachers make fun of them. Some parents want to marry them off, and all this will discourage them from continuing with their education. That requires that parents are also helped or sensitized to be able to be willing to support these children to go back to school.
I will start from the topic, how can the government enforce the existing policies? My assumption is we are talking about the public policies. Of course, there are many competing definitions regarding the public policies. But the one that I'm going to talk about is the one that is so simple. What the governments do and what the governments cannot do. Then, much has been said about the policies. My question is, we have talked about unwanted children. These are unwanted by whom? By our own parameters of definition or unwanted by God? And then my second the extension to that, we have talked about the role of governments. What has been, we're talking about contraceptives and whatever. When we look at the advice going around regarding the use of condoms, I want to find out who is regulating it, because much of it and what is causing much of problems in the communities, the information that we hear is oftentimes incomplete. If you assess it, there isn't much information about the positives and the negatives. It's going to tell you about the prevention of HIV, but is it 100% correct? What about this other less than 1% statistically?
I think I will not specifically respond to the issue raised about social welfare. I will make a broad statement and each one of us can actually make a story. One document I like reading is the African Commission 2005. We look at this document, the priorities that have been set by African leaders emphasize economic growth, and that puts social welfare as the list of the priorities. So the issue of dwindling social welfare services in African countries is not a surprise to any of us. I will approach the issue of policy from a point of analysis. I think what I've heard around raises issues, and I think we should be thinking to say, what are these issues? My quick analysis gives me that there are social issues, there are cultural issues, there are economic issues, there are legal issues. But if you look at the current policies, I think sometimes I get a laugh when I look at several policy, just to see that what has been written is the same, just changed to focus at a particular aspect. I think we need to be more serious in terms of when we are looking at the policies and we are addressing social issues. What are the social issues? We are dealing with cultural issues. What are the cultural issues? We are dealing with the economic issues. What are the economic issues? We are dealing with legal issues. What are the issues? The other issues is capacities. I think we've developed policies, programs without considering, do people have the capacities? Do people have the skills? I think that's what has affected implementation. The other issues is who designs the interventions? Is it somebody from somewhere, or is the people themselves? Have we involved the people in designing some of the interventions that we're talking about? And the last is the implementation. How is the implementation constructed? So I think as we look at issues of policies, this is what I think we should be looking at. Otherwise, I think the noise, the story that we continue talking about, will talk for the time to come.
The area of policies. Just to sum up, in terms of policy, there are quite a few things that have been touched on. One of the critical issues is we need to reflect on the whole policy development process. How do we arrive at our policies? Who is involved? And how do we strategize in terms of implementation? And my colleague touched on a very, very critical issue in terms of ascribing roles and responsibilities in terms of policy implementation. Who is going to do what? Because oftentimes we get an impression to say, no, this is for civil society, this is for government. Unless it is consensual, arrived through the policy development process where you are saying, as we're going to implement this policy, whether it's a social policy, a cultural policy, or an economic policy, you have agreed on the roles and responsibilities. It becomes easier. So it is important that as we are experimenting with the interventions on the ground, we should bear in mind that we are not working in a vacuum. We are working in a particular context. And definitely,
will need the support of our governments. That this has been quite an enriching day. There have been quite a lot of debates, a lot of issues being raised. As we go in the evening, let us also continue reflecting on them, because tomorrow we are supposed to come up with a declaration, Mangochi declaration, and therefore as we are planning for that declaration, the issues that are being raised should be taken into consideration. It's quite saddening that social welfare is at the helm, at the bottom. Maybe we need to really put up, if that's an AU document, what do we need to put in place? Because the family falls within the social welfare, and if it's at the bottom, what sort of issues do we need to put in place for our government? And I think we need to be thinking of that as we're moving forward, because these are very, very critical issues that need to be done.
My question goes to Julia. You talked about targeting the teen mothers and fathers in terms of parenting. I just wanted to find out how are other girls who are not yet victims of such circumstances being targeted. Especially that you are doing such kind of an activity or program to support those that are already victims of teenage pregnancies. I just wanted to find out how are those that are not targeted, those that are not yet teen mothers being targeted, so that they are not falling victims of such circumstances, and that you are not breeding a fertile ground for those that are not yet teen mothers, so that they can get support from the services.
Maybe three of you, or maybe starting from all the presenters yesterday. My name is Miriam Namanja, as I said yesterday. I'm representing Parents of Disabled Children Association of Malawi. And I said my keen interest is youth, maybe children with disabilities in general. Children with disabilities in general. And I've been observing since yesterday with a keen interest on youth with disability. And I wonder why you almost on all the snapshots or maybe the presentations, I've seen totally nothing regarding teens with disabilities. Is it that you haven't raised enough awareness, or maybe the teens with disabilities are being sidelined, or maybe do they have their own separate sessions? If they are having their own separate sessions, why is it like that? Because these days we are promoting inclusion, or maybe mainstreaming disabilities in all sectors of life.
I think my question goes to all. I was very interested in knowing the impact of your programs, maybe anecdotes and other maybe evaluations that you carried out, and also possible challenges that you are facing, so that we can learn. And also if you've got any lessons from what you've done, which you can replicate, that would be good for me to hear.
Program. We learned that it's delivered in school setup, and we know you said that the principals and the school management are very supportive of back to school support for teen mothers. This, we would want to know how it has been done differently, because some of the challenges that this policy means is actual proposition by school management that they do not want the moms to get integrated with the others. There's a lot of stigma that prevents these mothers from enjoying schooling. So what is it that has been done differently that the schools are now encouraging these girls to come back and actually encouraging even them having the certificates?
With Miriam's question on parenting children with disabilities or teen parents with disabilities, to be honest, within our program, it's one area that we need to build up on. It's one area that we have not really focused on, but we know they are out there and we know there are things that we need to do. So we welcome lessons, experiences, and programs from others so that we can build this aspect of our program. That is one area that we have not quite looked into. The impact of our programs, as Maureen would also confess together with me, apart from increased communication at household level that we have assessed through research, through rapid appraisals, through other methods that we have used as an organization, I think what was not expected as part of this program is the improved relationship between the spouses, which has a big bearing on how the children are being brought up at family setting. So that has been one of the most significant improvements, that when the two of them are on the same team,
then they're better placed to bring up their children in a more better way. Because the scenarios we had, the parents were not talking to each other in the first place. So if they're not talking to each other, then that presented a challenge in itself. So part of the improvements that we've seen is increased communication at household level. So everyone can put their issues on the table and they can discuss, but the improved relationship between the spouses.
Yes, that's a question we get asked very often. And it's a strategic decision that we made as an organization that we couldn't focus on everything and do it well. And there are a number of organizations in South Africa and even in the schools where there are programs aimed at pregnancy prevention. And the feeling was we had a discussion with our local Department of Social Development again at the beginning of this year, because it's a topic that comes up over. We'd already moved towards developing a program along those lines. And they said to us, no, let others do that. They are good at that. You focus on what you are doing well. And so it was also a matter of capacity. We decided, but there is a strong preventative component of the program as it stands now. And that is because we don't limit the participants to biological parents. So any teenager at the school can say, I'm also involved in parenting to a degree, I also want to be included on the program. So they are learning from those who have had to learn through their difficult experiences what parenting is all about. So that is the small preventative component that we have, because we have caregivers who are not doing it, but also going through the same.
Like I presented yesterday, we implement the Family Smarter program and the Health Choices for Better Future program. With regards to the question from Miriam about the inclusion of youth with disabilities, I will mention that there is no special or specific curriculum for youth with disabilities within the Health Choices program or the Family Smarter program. However, we do include their participation when it can permit. Even when they are disabled or physically challenged, but we will include them in the sessions if it can allow. Depending now, that would now range with what disability is the individual suffering from. But unfortunately, there is not anything which you can say is special for this group.
I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. It's a really important subject, and I've been very interested in hearing all the discussion. I will be joined by Natalia Halwindo and Elise Prince, who will speak a little bit to the project that we've implemented in Namibia. What I'd like to talk to you about is Triple P, which is a parenting program, a system of parenting programs. We've heard a lot about very targeted programs, and Triple P has the capacity to adapt and be targeted. But I'd like to propose that it's also incredibly important for us to provide effective parenting programs for all parents. One of the best ways, I think, for us to reduce the amount of teen pregnancy, to reduce the capacity of children to make bad decisions about their sexuality and their safeness, will be to effectively parent them as they're growing up. And so this is more to be perceived as a prevention program and an effective parenting program for all parents. We're going to talk a little bit about the results that we got from our customer acceptability studies in Namibia and Kenya. And then we'd like to raise a discussion about, given what do we need to consider for teen parents and for sibling-headed households. So that Triple P is a flexible system of parenting and family support. By a flexible system, it means we have a number of different programs that can be brought into play for the particular needs of parents, from universal parenting to very targeted clinical interventions. This is clinical line Namibia, and this is where the pilot research was done earlier this year in May. And I'll just have a brief overview of the successes and challenges that were part of the pilot research. And foremost was that the ratings for acceptability, usefulness, and likelihood of use were
Now, we were also looking at areas that are unique to these groups, the teenage pregnant groups, and additional sections that may be helpful. Now, we would like to find ways on how to eliminate the harmful cultural and societal beliefs regarding teen parents who do not take responsibility for their own children. In some cultures, it's okay for you to get pregnant at 13 years and give the baby to your parents to raise. And we would like to find a way of eliminating that, because we are basically all in agreement that it's harmful how children become parents at a very young age. And then also we do have the absent young fathers. They impregnate the girls and then they go on with their own lives. So who is suffering at the end of the day? It's the baby.
Our face protection. Every year in South Africa, there are many young female learners who attend their school-based school, who end their school days for good. However, it is not because they have completed their studies, but because they are pregnant. The shocking question is how does the community deal with girls as young as 10 falling pregnant? So the first issue that I would like us to look at, even as we discuss this, is that girls that are affected by early pregnancy can be very young as 10. The presenter, I think it's one of the students, for example, 14 years in school, but they can be very young. And the questions are, as we design these programs, how much do we make sure that we capture them all and we capture them effectively? If this is happening in the family, and it's always happening in the family, what questions should we be raising regarding caring for the girl child, supporting the girl child, and most importantly, protecting the girl child? How many are affected? In Malawi, 1 in 40 learners, or 26%, girls aged 16 to 19, has begun childbearing, the majority from rural areas at 27% compared to urban areas at 21%. This indicates that the numbers that we're dealing with are huge, and that the distribution of these girls who are affected is also complex. They are urban, semi-urban, rural, semi-rural, and the question, therefore, even as we design programs, is to what extent do we capture everybody and in every context? Are these programs rural-based? Are they urban-based? How appropriate are the designs for the different situations in which young girls find themselves or young boys find themselves? What makes them so vulnerable? I have a 14-year-old girl who is having a disagreement with my parents about dating. There's this boy, Mangochi, who likes me, and I'm very comfortable with him. The trouble is my parents have strict rules against dating, and I think it's unfair. I think I am mature enough to date, and I know right from wrong. My friends approve of Mangochi because he's friendly and outgoing. I've tried talking to my parents about this, but I always end up in tears. How can I persuade them to give this guy a chance? One of the reasons girls become vulnerable is the growing up process itself. And everybody knows that. A time comes when girls and boys would like to understand themselves, interact with themselves, learn more about male and female. Very natural. The question is, how much do parents then understand what is going on in the minds of these young kids? When we're dealing with rural families, to what extent do they understand the biological and the emotional development of girls and boys and why this should be happening? When parents are very strict in terms of not allowing girls and boys to go out, do they understand how much it affects those children? When families are becoming very permissive, is it an advantage or a disadvantage? In other words, we talk about protecting girls and boys so they don't get into these two areas. What is the message against the natural course of development? And this to me is particularly important when we're dealing with quote unquote illiterate families who may not understand the social psychology behind growing up. It is also our own problem, maybe as experts, that we don't understand the social cultural setting and how kids are brought up in the rural traditional setting and how to combine these two sources of information, the modern way and the more traditional way.
To learn from you, because I know it's not only Malawi, even other countries within, especially the eastern and southern region, we are at the same page. We are parenting has been taught in that context of child development. So I would appreciate, Doctor, if you did some analysis on that, or it's a gap in the research.
First question, I appreciate the results that you have. However, I wanted to find out if within the research you were also involving or pulling the data that would involve young teens with disabilities. Let me take this opportunity to say that in most cases, as we plan in various activities, most children or teens with disabilities are being sidelined. But we have to make sure that since disability now is considered as a rights issue, it is no longer considered as a charity issue as it was in the past. I feel it is necessary that we always include in the programs that we are doing should be inclusive, so that all should be taken on board and try to assist them accordingly.
I mentioned of 70% of women in Ethiopia either being mothers or having their first baby. The document I read with regard to that information was a study conducted by Children 2010. That is the document that had that information. Yeah? So that's where I got the information and I took it as.
I don't put together a program and getting the people to confirm, but also getting the people to be present is also something else. So look at the program and the presenters that we had over the last 2 days. It's a job was done by the organizers, the sharing committee, and all the partners that we got. I would also like to extend a lot of thanks to the presenters. Take time to put your presentation together and also sharing the learning that you had in the different areas of the organization. So let's give applause to the presenters who shared with us.
The preamble, we commit. You see that we commit. There is taking note, confirm, taking cognizance at the bottom page. Sorry, I'm working on the initial draft. The second last point on the preamble. Are we saying we commit in bold? Yes. And then there's something on the principles of, have you seen that? Principles of effective parenting, child growth and development.
Can you repeat it again?
I think effective parenting, principles of effective parenting, child growth and development. So maybe I'll just take 5 of the minutes. What else I would like us to focus on, because my colleague has just mentioned everything besides the preamble. Those are the principles we are dwelling in from this declaration. Is to take us to the last page on what we declare, because he's already mentioned the pointers on what we base our declaration on. And maybe just to insist, it's from the proceedings that have been going on in this conference, and also from the feedback from various country chapters on the gaps that are on the ground, the main challenges that we need to work from as stakeholders. So we've incorporated that to make sure that we've not left any country chapter out. Besides, this document, like as I've said, in the final one, we communicate to the Secretariat if you see the need to have anything included here.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we can separate parents from organizations. That parents should be a point on its own, and the organizations on their own. Because, yeah. The vice of early marriages. I don't know whether we can just say the vice of child marriages.
On 2, as well as generally throughout the whole document, I think we need a section on the law relating to the protection of children and childhood. And that seems to be missing. Because it's okay saying that we will try to ensure that the vice of early marriage, and I would suggest early sexual debut, should be in there. I think we have to maintain a position that there is an age at which it is sexual abuse and an abuse of the child's rights. So I don't quite know how we do it, but I think in the document in general, we're missing the legal frameworks that protect childhood, and particularly on number 2, we need to look at the legal aspects of the protection of very young children.
I think number 2, but generally throughout, it's because of the way this is worded, it implies that promoting norms of best practices in parenting will ensure that early marriage is eliminated, and I don't think those 2 things necessarily, or it's not comprehensive enough, because I think then you have to include policy, laws, that kind of thing. It's not just promoting best practices in parenting that we need to address in reducing early marriage.
It's not equal to also be part of the preamble, because when you should talk about in line with the UN Convention or these other statutory requirements, and that should be part of the preamble. So it should not only be in the final, but also in line with the UN Convention and other.
The last word in 3 should be pregnancy and not parenting. It should be that we strive to promote policies, strategies and public services that enhance the control of increase in teenage pregnancy.
Maybe if we say that we strive to promote policies, strategies and public services that enhance that curb the increase in teenage pregnancies, like instead of saying enhance goals, so that curbs teenage pregnancies.
I thought what was reflected in terms of teenage parenting was addressing the needs of our teens, just other than looking at issues of pregnancy. Because there are other teen parents who are found in that position, not because they became pregnant, but maybe they are looking after siblings as a result of the HIV/AIDS pandemic. So if we just concentrate on pregnancy, what sort of services are there for those other children who are heading households?
But the other issue is that we should also think, I think, on 3, in terms of, in as much as we have strategies that will focus on teenage pregnancies, we will still have teenage parents. And the question is, I thought that the issue was also trying to target that we will have policies, strategies, and public services that will work on the teenage parenting. So we cannot just remove it. That's my thinking.
I'm wondering whether are we as organizations who are seated here promoting policies, or are we advocating for policies that were policies, strategies, and public services that can support these children, and also bringing in a component of ensuring that we are not only concerned with teenage parenting or teenage pregnancy alone, but those policies should also capture in case of teenage fathers who are becoming fathers. So are we advocating or promoting, or what exactly are we doing?
I think we were also looking at what is it alongside these policies we can tap from the practices that have really worked, particularly on the custodians of the communities, so that they may not be policy in nature as it is, but where now we're trying to tap on the already existing opportunities from the community so that they can help to really raise those
emotions amongst the participant groups. We can move the first part of 4 to 3 because we're covering preventing teenage pregnancies. 3, I don't know if we agree on that. Then maybe 4 can just be unsafe abortions, because unsafe abortions, sexual transmissions, including HIV, like these are different issues. So we can say for 4, that will focus on preventing unsafe abortions. Then maybe for 5, we can say focus on preventing sexually transmitted infections, including HIV and AIDS. Because abortions and sexually transmitted disease and HIV and AIDS are different issues.
3 is about teenage parenting. Now, my understanding of 4 is that these are risky behaviors or risks that young people are prone to. So, I would instead of making the list longer, I don't want to make us think, I'm comfortable leaving them together as risky areas that children are likely to face. Abortion, HIV/AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases, teenage pregnancies, as potential risks children go through. So they are all lumped up in 4. He's proposing we split them.
Countries consider abortion illegal completely, while some think of some abortion as can be permitted. So I don't know how we can handle that one, because abortion, some countries is very illegal. To some, they permit, they allow abortion. So I don't know how we can handle it.
If we leave it as unsafe abortion, then we will be covered, because it's like what we are saying is that the abortion that would not be safe for the adolescents is the one that we are trying to prevent. Because then it covers both in situations where it is legal.
On number 5, we should simply knock out the word counselling and just let it read that we will incorporate in our programs activities that provide teenage parents and adolescents with reproductive health services, because it's more than counselling that they require.
Sometimes if it is silent there, the member would say reproductive health services, and counseling support. Because the challenge is that even within reproductive health, actually right now, those of you who are in the nursing field would agree with me that one of the biggest issues that we have is the postpartum counseling support that doesn't exist in most of the places.
But I think it changes. I agree with that other change. It should be that we will incorporate in our programs, activities that provide teenage parents, blah, blah, blah. Because it reads now that we will incorporate in our programs and activities that provide. It doesn't make grammatical sense.
The comment, as Magdalena has said, that the sexual reproductive health should be separate from counseling, because we can have different forms of counseling. There are issues to do with maybe psychosocial support, issues to do with the sexual reproductive health. So counseling is broader, so it has to be separated.
On 6, we need to say step up prevention of teenage pregnancies.
We should also re-emphasize the role of fathers as co-parents, because I think it came out clearly that yes, they want to be involved, but maybe the platforms or the space are not there. So I think we need to re-emphasize the role of fathers there, be they young or of age, as co-parents.
Back to 6. It should say youth with comprehensive information related to reproductive rights and safe sex.
Maybe if we say disseminate information on parenting in our local communities. I think if we say local communities, we all understand what we're talking about. To create a pool of informed communities, because we're speaking about where we come from. Like it might be Kenya, it might be Malawi, it might be South Africa. So we wanted to, I don't know if I'm getting 9 right in that sense.
I've been thinking about the declarations we are making, and I'm like, are we really setting parameters of somebody who is not with us, who did not listen listen what we were doing, or who doesn't understand what we are doing, can be able to take up from what we are doing tomorrow when none of us is there and do specific things. For example, number 3, sorry for taking you back, just to give you my thinking. For example, number 3, we are saying that we will strive to promote policies, strategies, and public services that enhance the control of increasing teenage parenting. I'm imagining of somebody who didn't know, who has no idea of what we are doing. Will we be able to take our agenda forward? In other words, what I'm saying, and even that goes also to number 4, we need to put some kind of indicators, parameters. For example, if we are going to strive to promote those policies or advocate and promote those policies and services, by doing what? Maybe if we say by doing ABC, something like that, then that will be easier for somebody who does not understand what we are doing to be able to do for all. I was finding number 5 and number 6 almost saying that somebody can easily understand, because we are saying, for example, that we as individuals and organizations step up and step up teenage pregnancies efforts by providing youth with comprehensive information. There we
and in terms of how we want to word it, I'm already thinking post this conference, and I'm looking at the people here, the delegates here as representatives of their countries, and we are talking about the many things that we want to do in terms of policy, practice, and all that. And I think that we are having a very important pool of stakeholders that are not here that need this information. We have heard that there are policies that are not even known by people who are supposed to implement. So for me, I would like number 9 to have a word which is going to talk about some stakeholders that we need to go back and probably even start having meetings with them to disseminate this, first of all, and to have a buy-in that we have these issues that we have declared that are important for our children, and these are probably what we are committing to do. So as we are thinking about whether it's community at whatever level, let us remember the stakeholders that are back into our countries that need to know and we need to plan around with.
Start from the beginning, just when we are listening to all these people are, we say we as parents and child-focused organizations. I think there are other people who are joining this group, like research institutions, maybe government and the like. Therefore, it's good to mention in such a way. The other thing is, when David was summarizing, just listening, many good points which are not mentioned to me here. For instance, this how to control these risky behaviors to prevent the problem from the beginning, and child protection. How can we put this in which way? Harmonization of those is one, and disability not mentioned. The other thing is, information exchange and partnership among organizations. How can we put this in this place? The other thing is research, conduct evidence-based research and the like. Therefore, how can we put such things in this? The other thing is, from 5 to 8, it talks about health in one or the other way. Therefore, psychosocial and other things should be included to my knowledge. And number 9, disseminate information on parenting. Better to say positive parenting or something like that.
Whilst we are causing these problems, are we not declaring anything on for example, the sugar daddies who are causing these problems, the older men? Don't we have a statement to say on those problems which are causing these things, apart from dealing with these teenage or adolescent boys and girls? I don't know.
Know that under 4 we are talking about, under 3 we are talking about promoting and advocating for policies, strategies and public services. I think we also emphasize the fact that the social health, social welfare also has to be promoted. I mean, the capacity within the social welfare departments, within government public service needs to be looked into, and I think it's an important element because most programs are donor funded and the government needs to take up most of the responsibilities in providing the services.
I just want to ask one question to the Pan-African Steering Committee. if they can find any resource so that we as traditional leaders in these 7 countries, or we can invite entire Africa, we as traditional leaders, so that we can have one window where we can meet at one place, any country. We can meet with regional leaders so that we can cross-check our culture across the country, across the Africa.
Otherwise, I have enjoyed your company, and my team is saying that you have been quite a wonderful group. You have really been able to support them in the way that I have supported you. I hope that there hasn't been major issues. If there are, wherever you have people, there will be differences. And let us just make sure that those differences are managed during this time where